I want to share what I've learned over the years in developing brains in Easy Builder, but there's a lot to unpack, and there's a lot I continue to build and refine. Everything here in Spock is actually the result of years of work with many prototypes of robot brains I have built in Easy Builder, as well as before Easy Builder, from prototypes of robot brains that I've built over the years, from even before when Easy Builder wasn't in existence yet. I feel like have learned a lot from these various attempts and failures over the years. I have also learned a lot from these resources. Specifically, they've influenced my beliefs in artificial intelligence and in brain building design. And the first is How to Create a Mind. It's a book by Ray Kurzweil. He's been influential in robotics and artificial intelligence for a long time, and odds are you've heard of him and heard his name before. While I don't subscribe to every one of Ray's conclusions, I do think that this book in particular, sums up many of his other books, his previous works, as well as the state of artificial intelligence and research in general on knowledge of the human mind and how it works as we understand it today. Another one is How the Mind Works by Steven Pinker. You may or may not have heard of him before. He's a leading cognitive scientist and author of several books and has been on many science shows. If you watch a lot of stuff on Discovery Channel and those kind of shows, you might have heard his name before. It might kind of ring a bell, it may not. One of his teachings is how separated and modulated the mind really is. One example from his book that has always really stuck with me is in this example, this story, it really demonstrates to me how modulated the mind is. And it's a case of a man that received an injury to his brain, and he could no longer see faces. Only faces. He had no other cognitive or vision issues, just face recognition. As if the damage to his brain, like the brain circuit or module was in his mind, was damaged and faces just become a blur to this person. The book taught me not only should minds be modular, but where possible, the modulars need to be independent of one another, because independent modules are important for when we develop brains in artificial intelligence, because it allows us to build new functions and add things independently, and even turn off functions we don't like and replace functions. If we design things totally interconnected, it would be impossible to add and replace as we learn how to build better minds. And finally, MIT OpenCourseWare class on artificial intelligence. This is Professor Patrick Winston's course. You can find the training material and videos from the MIT OpenCourseWare website. You can find the videos on YouTube as well. Things that I've learned and picked up that has helped me refine my brain building designs. I really learned a lot in this courseware, but I would say that what influenced me the most were lessons on memory and how memories can be used in AI systems. And to a lesser extent, I would say some lessons I learned from subsumption-based architecture or behavior-based designs. They also have influenced me. And really, all that being said is to explain that brain building to me is a serious passion, not something I take lightly. I've been pursuing knowledge and research in this area for years, seeking out the right balance of what it takes to build a robot brain. Granted, each robot's need for a brain is going to be different. The assumption here is that if you're watching this video, you're interested in building a more complex robot brain in Easy Builder, and that your passion is driving you towards seeing if you can give your creation a mind like Data from Star Trek The Next Generation or something close to it. Well, I can't tell you, exactly how to build a mind like Data's because I have not achieved that myself yet. I can share what I'm doing so that way you can see what I'm doing and you can see how I'm trying to achieve that goal, and then you can decide for yourself if you like my ideas enough to try to incorporate them into your own robots or find ways to improve them. So brain building with Easy Robot. Building brains does require some rules, and these are the simplest rules that I have. Keep it simple, keep modules separate, use the tools you have before looking for new tools, back up often, and create revisions often. Now we're going to dive into these and figure out what these rules really mean. First, keep it simple, which really means don't really seek to make your design too complicated, because we as individual robot builders, we don't have large teams at our disposal, right? We're not university teams, we're not professors, we're individuals building our own individual robots, so we don't exactly have a lot of room for complex designs. So we got to try to make our designs simple, easy for us to understand, and we need to leave room for the flexibility in our designs too. Because if we make our designs overly complicated, as they grow over time, we're not going to have the flexibility to adapt them, and that's going to leave problems for ourselves. We want to keep modules separate. That's extremely important. That's a problem I've had in the past with brain building, of not keeping modules separate, not keeping the functions of different brain functions separate. When I've tried to put everything all together in one master script, if you will, it has not ended well. It's ended with a lot of code being scrapped and a lot of projects being scrapped. You want to keep everything as standalone as possible. You want to really think about that. You want to really keep that as your main mantra, is make everything that you create, all of the functions that you create in your robot's brain, try and make it standalone. Make it something that can be standalone, something that can be turned on or turned off, that won't affect the rest of your robot as much as possible. There will be times where that just won't be possible because many things do interconnect, but as much as possible, make it something that you can turn on and turn off and make it separate. Use the tools that you have before looking for new tools. This one is one that I've been guilty of, because it's easy to get carried away thinking that you need something else without taking full advantage of what you already do have. And within Easy Builder, there's a lot of tools and a lot of resources that we have available to us that we're not taking full advantage of at any given time. A great example of this is the feature to read and write to text files. Not very many of us are taking full advantage of that. Very few of us probably are. And a lot of us have heard the technology and hear about databases and know that other more advanced robots are using some type of database, and so we get carried away and we think, well, our robot needs a database too. We must utilize that. And if we don't have this terminology, this database, well, then our robot is lacking something. And it's not necessarily the case. It may be the case that we're not using the right tools currently, and a proper database may be needed, but It may not be needed for your robot. It all depends. It's all about using the right tool for what your project is. And if you're just starting out building your robot's brain, odds are you don't need a full traditional database to start out right away. It's very important. Always use the tools that you have before looking for new tools. Back up often. There's nothing worse than working on something and losing your work. You always want to back up and back up often and have multiple spots for your work. Easy Builder makes it easy to back up your files to your desktop and to the Easy Cloud. And with the Easy Cloud, if you've never used that before, you can set it to make your Easy Cloud app either public, so that way you can share it with anyone, which is really nice because then others can learn from what you've created, or you can keep it private, which means only you can access your files, which is something I need to do more of myself. I need to make more of my files public on the Easy Cloud. Creating revisions often. This is important with brain building in particular, because brain building is going to be about trial and error. No matter what you do, it's going to be about some trial and error, because there is no perfect one-way roadmap to creating your robot's brain. So that's going to mean revisions, and that's going to mean experimenting and trying different things out. And what that's going to mean is you're going to ultimately want to create some different revisions, and that's going to mean let's say right now today you have your robot's project file, your robot's brain, more or less, working, and it's stable, and you're happy with it. You know, let's say that you're, after watching these videos, you want to implement some changes to it. Maybe you come away with some ideas. Well, what you would want to do is create a new version of your project file, and then start making revisions to it. That way you have your stable version of your project file, and then you have an experimenter's version of your project file. And then you could make revisions to it. And then you could, if you're happy with the revisions you've made to it, once you're happy to a certain point and you feel like you're going to make some more experimentations, maybe then it's time to create another revision. And then make a backup of it. Backing up, creating revisions. Getting into that habit of doing that will be very important, because eventually at some point the work that you do, it will go haywire. Things will go off track. Adjustments will be made, and you will probably become unhappy with some of the changes you've made, and you'll want to go back to an old version of your project. And that means going back to an old revision, or going back to an old backup copy. So that's why it's important. Have revisions and have backup. That way you don't have to duplicate your work. You just have to go back to where your old file was, restore it, and your robot's back to the version that you were happy with. Make it slow and steady, and stay with what you know. Now, this isn't an official rule, but sometimes the promise of greener grass with new technology can make us forget our own strengths and talents. And if we lose our focus, we may end up shelving our project rather than continuing to develop our robot's brain. You know, this one, I've seen this happen to other robot builders, and at times I've been a little guilty of this myself. You know, I mentioned earlier of using the tools that you have at your disposal rather than seeking out tools that you don't have. And I mentioned databases for one. The promise of, you know, of other technology, and thinking, oh, I need something else, and then you might try to pursue it, right? Like if you have convinced yourself that you absolutely must have a database, a traditional, true database, for what you want to work on. But at the same time, you also don't have a working knowledge of databases, and you don't have a connection to a database in EasyBuilder, and you don't have a method to go about gaining that, and you don't have a path to utilize it, then you might end up just really frustrating yourself by pursuing the promise of greener grass with this technology that you think other people are using that they may or may not be, in a way that they may or may not be using it in the way that you think they are. And I've seen that happen. I've talked to other robot builders that have done that. Not just in that example, but in other ways, that have pursued something like that and really got focused and charged on something, and then from that it made them lose their focus, and it kind of took the wind out of their sails, and they ended up shelving their project rather than continuing to develop their robot, when they totally could have, if they had stayed within their own strengths and continued to work slowly and continued to use the tools that they had. They could have continued to develop their own ideas, with this little bit of technology that was, currently out of reach, if they would have continued to focus on what they do have. I know that they would have went so much further. So this is the unwritten rule. Take it slow and steady. Don't get yourself overwhelmed with technology changes, especially with some of the stuff with the cognitive services that keep coming out. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed by the promises of some of the cognitive services, or things like databases, or different things like that. Don't let yourself get caught up in feeling like you're missing out on something if certain people are experimenting with something and you're not. It doesn't mean that you're missing out on something necessarily. If you're really passionate about it, then by all means, please pursue it. But don't let it take your focus away from what you're working on, and don't let it end up shelving your project. And last but not least, the most important rule is keeping the modules separate. And of course, keep it simple, but continue to keep it separate. Keep those modules separate. Now, as I stated, my goal is to build a mind like Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation. But to be honest and truthful, I don't know that I can do that. I'm hopeful that I can, but I don't honestly know that I can do that. But I am going to invite you on this journey and show you what I've been working on, and show you where I'm at in this journey. And hopefully it'll give you some ideas and inspirations, and it'll let you see if you want to implement my ideas or not, and it'll let you decide for yourself if you think I'm onto something, or if you think I'm out in the weeds somewhere. This demonstration here, this is one of my script examples from the tutorial I did on reading and writing text files. And in this example here, we can see a lot of individual script controls. And this is all with the assumption that you're familiar with creating scripts. If you go to Project and Add, and you go to Scripting, and if you just go to, where is it? Easy Script, then you get a blank, and the screen is so busy now I've lost where it went to. Where did it go? Here it is. Here is our new script. So you see the problem. The screen is very busy. It's filled with all these individual boxes of these individual scripts. And when you're first learning in Easy Builder, that's what a lot of people do, is they create these individual scripts that go in here, and either through Blockly or through EasyScript. They create the code individually under the individual control, and before too long it gets to be a mess. You don't want to have a bunch of individual controls like this. What you want to utilize is a script manager, which is a little bit different. If you've never used a script manager before, it's under the same scripting option, and it's called Easy Script Manager. And we'll click on that to add it. And where did it? Okay, here it is. Here's our new script manager. So with that, we get some controls. We have the option to add a script. We get the debugging window, and we get the gear icon. Okay, so the gear icon is kind of interesting. You know, if you're this is the assumption you've been working with Easy Builder for a while. If you're interested in trying to build a more advanced brain in Easy Builder, then the assumption is you know the basics already. I'm not going to cover that for you, but maybe a few of the little things you might have missed. So maybe you haven't used the script manager before. So it doesn't, nothing's different about it. It's just a different way to manage your scripts, and it's going to really organize them much better than creating individual boxes here. Rather than having a whole bunch of boxes like this, it's going to allow you to create them individually. Like here, we'll save that one. We'll create another one. We'll do another one. So you're getting an idea here. We have 3 different scripts. They're all blank, but we can start them. I can delete them. If I start them, if they were actually doing anything, then I could stop them. I could pause them. I can rearrange them too, in order of importance, like the way that I want to see them. If these are scripts that are functioning and doing different things for me, I can change the order that they go in. Which the order here, it doesn't do anything. Ordering them separately is just a visual thing. It's just for your own visual benefit. But that might help you to visually look at it if you're running some of the processes or testing some things, to just organize them. If you've got a script manager and you've got a couple of different scripts that relate to audio controls, you might want to group those together. So you might, kind of move them up around like that, group them together. And then, if you've got a couple of scripts that are related to motion controls, you probably want to group those together. Those are the kind of things that you can do in your script managers. But likewise, you can also just keep creating script managers and then group your scripts together that way as your scripts grow. And that's something that you'll want to plan for. And the other thing that you can do is name these script managers. Like this one we have, it's named Script Manager 2. Now Easy Builder did that for us because we already had one added in this one called Script Manager. So the very first one you add, it'll be named Script Manager by default. If you add another one, it'll be called Script Manager 2. If you add a third one, it'll be called Script Manager 3. Now, if you don't do anything further with it, this won't matter. But as you continue to script things further and things get interconnected, the name of this script manager will become important, because eventually you can start to use command controls, and if you want to call upon one of these scripts, you'll have to find it within your script manager. So you might want to name these script managers, and you can do that in the control here. So let's say that this script manager, let's say we organize this and all of the scripts in here were related to audio controls. So let's say we name this audio. Okay, and let's say this one is related to reading text files, so we'll call this one text. Okay, so here's an organizational thing. This organizational and naming convention, things that you make decisions on here, these kind of framework decisions are going to play a part as your brain grows further. So the decisions that you make are very important. The better naming conventions that you can come up with to begin with will help you in the long run, so that way you don't have to go back and rename things and then go back and change your code and go back and make a lot of changes. So that's the first lesson in working with an Easy Builder, is if you're currently putting all your scripts into individual script boxes, you'll need to stop doing that. You'll need to start using the script managers, and you'll need to start understanding that you need to organize them and thinking about the names of not only your individual scripts, but the names of your script managers. And you'll want to think about them in terms of the names of them, so that way you can remember what your scripted functions do, and think about it in terms of being able to recall that and utilize these scripts and these names and other lines of code. So think about that too. And leaving like these default names here, script 2, script 1, script 0, script 3, you would not want to do that, because that's going to be very cryptic. That's not going to tell you anything. That's not going to be descriptive of what that script does for you, and that's not a good naming convention. If this was if these were scripts used for audio, you would want to name the script for what it's doing for you. So that's very important, and it's part of the foundation for what you're going to need in building your robot's brain. And now here's an example of a much cleaner version of all of that previous code. What I did is I took all of those individual scripts and I manually went in, I copied the code from those individual boxes, I recreated the scripts in a script manager in a new project, and I just copy and pasted them into the scripts over here, and created a new project file, a new version, so that way I had a new version of my read and write file sample. So that you can see this version is much cleaner than this version. This version is not manageable, as you could probably agree. But versions like this usually do get created because it can be a little bit easier to learn, and it's what people tend to do when they first start learning, when they first start scripting. It's a little less intimidating and a little less scary to work with just one box at a time and think of it in terms of just one little script at a time. It's easier to wrap your mind around that, and then you get comfortable with it, and then before too long you have a whole bunch of boxes and you're kind of overwhelmed, and then you might find yourself not knowing what to do. And speaking of a lot of boxes, we'll take a look at Spocks' full project as it stands today. Quite a few boxes, quite a few different scripts, both in test form and in complete functionality. Quite a bit going on, more than I can explain in one video. So what I'm going to do is break it up into a couple of different videos, and I'm going to have to break it up also into a couple of different project files in order to explain what's currently going on in Spocks Brain. And by the way, Spocks Brain is also the same as Data's brain, because if you're not familiar with Data, that's another one of my robots, and Spocks Brain actually started out as Data's brain. And something that you might not be familiar with is the merge function in Easy Robot. And the way that that works, a lot of these controls started out as Data's brain. Now, Data is a taller robot that I have. He's 3 foot tall when his upper torso is on his lower body. He's over 3 foot tall. But Spock, if you've seen him, he is a standard JD robot. So he's much more portable, and I like working with him and developing him because it's a lot easier. Most of the functions and scripts are interportable between the two. The only things that aren't that I can't really intermix are going to be the animations control, the things that control their motors, because their bodies are laid out differently. But other than that, a lot of the scripted functions are the same, and then where the files that they use are in different folders, so that part's different. But other than that, most of the things are the same. So in Easy Builder, if you've never used it before, and I don't think a lot of people have, but it's a great feature. It's called the merge function, and I'll show you this. Once you click on it, you can go to another project. We'll go to my read files test project. Okay, and we'll just pick my compare scripts, because that's not going to affect anything. The merge function, what it does is it will open up the project and any of the controls in it, including scripts, anything that's in there. It'll give you the option to select them and merge them into your current project, which is really neat. And anything that you've got set up in there will carry over into your current project. So I'm going to carry over this current script into this project. So I'll click OK. Somewhere, there it is, compare, came up. That obviously was for something, some kind of test. I don't know what it was for, but I don't need that, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. But that was just to show you what the merge function is for, and how you can carry over things that you develop in one project into another and then carry them back. So things that I'm developing in Spock can go back into Data, and then things, if I develop them differently in Data, I can carry them over into Spock. I really want to point this out to you, is the merge function, because if you're gonna try to pursue building a more advanced brain in Easy Builder, probably a lot of you might find yourself happy with where your robot is currently, meaning your robot right now probably responds to voice commands. It can probably do a lot of things that you want it to do, but your robot might not be creating memories necessarily. Your goal may not be, you may have not set out to try to create a mind like Data from Star Trek, whereas I have. So if you see some of my ideas and some of these scripts, and then you decide, I want to try that, I would not recommend, in fact, I encourage you not to, do not implement them directly into the project that is already controlling your robot. Please create an alternate project and then develop within that. And like, going back to the rules, take it slow, work within your skills and your comfort level, and develop another project in Easy Builder. Develop more projects in Easy Builder. Test. It's okay to create multiple projects and test them out, try things out, let things fail, and go back to them, and keep your functioning projects working, and keep developing your robot the way that you're used to working with it. Don't stop that process just for the sake of trying to create a more advanced robot brain. That's my advice.